Hello, and welcome to my video about restoring an Ercol Pebble coffee table. I bought this on Facebook Marketplace for £100, which is an awful lot of money for a very small little table, but it's perfect for what I had in mind for it. I'll show you at the end where it's going to go. This isn't in too bad condition. Ercol is really desirable. It's a timeless design. It's incredibly well made, and I have no doubt that this will continue to be desirable for a very long time, so I certainly won't have lost any money on it. Plus, this is a really exciting learning curve for me. This is one of the smallest things that Ercol make, and it's a great start for me to learn how to restore furniture, which is something that I would really like to do. Speaking of which, let's get on with it. I'm going to start by using some paint and varnish remover to remove all of the old varnish that is on that table. It's probably had the incorrect stuff just put over and on the top of it over the years, so it's quite sort of thick with the wrong stuff. And in order to make this look really nice, we need to get it back to the bare wood. So I'm going to start by just applying quite a healthy amount of this. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes to do its thing, so I'm going to lather it on nice and thick with a paintbrush, and then we can scrape it off afterwards. Obviously, you need to make sure that the sides are coated, but it's not the thickest of layers anyway, so when we start sanding it, it's going to all come off anyway, but I just wanted to get it off to a good start by using some paint stripper so that I'm not just sanding thick layers of gloopy varnish from decades of the incorrect stain being put on it. So I'm going to use this little paint scraper to just scrape off the paint stripper, and you can see there it's all dripping down in a brown color, which means that it's really started to work quite well. So I thought the next thing I'd do is use some wire wool, but I really underestimated quite how much sanding I would have had to have done with the wire wool to remove the last sort of bits of the old finish that was on there. So I did this for probably about 20 minutes, and then I just thought, right, I'm going to get some 180 grit sandpaper and just give it an actual sand and get it right down to the bare wood. I think I was just nervous to sand Ercol. I think, you know, how expensive this furniture is and how perfect of a finish I want it to be. I was just nervous, but I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it. It's a smooth round edge anyway, so if I sand a bit too much off, it's not exactly going to be visible. It'll be lost in the original curves of the Pebble coffee table. So I'm using this sandpaper, going all around the edges. I might be going in the wrong sort of a direction against the grain, but I did finish it off in a uniform straight up and over on all of the sides across the top, so that it was all in the same direction. And then I moved on to the wire wool, which is a nice easy thing to flow around the edges of the coffee table, but you can really start to see now just how clean I've managed to get the top of this table. It's considerably lighter, which is exactly what we want. I then also decided to sand the legs. These just had quite a few little dings and dents on them from the Hoover, the vacuum cleaner, whatever has been bashing into it. And again, just like the top, because of the curved nature of this table, I could afford to lose a little bit of thickness from sanding away those gouges, and it would not be visible at all to the untrained eye. I'm sure if an Ercol worker was to come around with their vernier calipers and start measuring the diameters, I think I would be in trouble. However, if we could get past that and they could forgive me, I would love to have a chat with them about Ercol. So maybe we could make a cup of tea and even use the Ercol Pebble table to hold the tea and have a great conversation. So I'm going to move on to the oil. This is an Osmo oil, clear satin. This was what I found out was the best oil to use. Now, this is the internet, so I'm sure that's going to be wrong to a lot of people, but to me and a lot of other people online, this is the stuff to use. So once I had brushed away all of the dust with a dry brush, I could then start applying the Osmo oil. Now, I started off just getting it on really thick so that I could cover absolutely everything, make sure that it was too thick, to be honest with you. And then what I did was I took a brand new brush, which was completely dry, and used that to smoothen everything so that it was all uniform, because this stuff is going to soak in and then leave it for about 10 hours to dry. And then I'm just going to be sanding it down again anyway, to finish off with a wax coating, which we'll get onto in a little bit. But you can see now that I've got those legs really nice and smooth, the oil going onto them is just making them absolutely pop. And if I'm right in saying the legs are beech and the top is elm, so in actual fact, once this is completely finished and I've done the slightly different finish on the top with the wax, there will be a really nice distinction between the two woods of this Ercol pebble coffee table, which is actually a sort of a design feature in a lot of the Ercol range, is that the spindles and stuff are a slightly different color wood to the flatter, wider pieces. So now I'm going to move on to sanding the top down. Again, it's been about 10 hours since I put on the Osmo oil. I'm using some 240 grit sandpaper to just give this a very light rub. We don't need to go crazy, but the oil will have soaked into the grain and made some of the grain stand a bit proud. And just to get that nice flat satin finish, I'm just going to be going over the whole top of it with some 240 grit sandpaper, making sure to wear a mask. And then I'll finish off with a little bit of wire wool. You can see it's really flat now compared to when it got first put on. I know it dried, but even when it dried and I went back to it 10 hours later, it was still kind of shiny, but just doing the light sanding and a bit of wire wool has gotten that absolutely perfect finish, which is just a satin smooth finish. Now, to finish off, this is some natural beeswax wood polish and treatment, and I'll leave links to this stuff in the description. I learned that you apparently apply this with wire wool, which is, you know, a little bit confusing, but I'm going to go for it and just see what happens. You can always do this again and again, because what you do is you apply it, leave it for about 20 minutes, and then you buff it to try and get that sort of matte shine to it. I know that sounds a little bit like an oxymoron, but what you're looking for is a sort of a shiny matte, which I just repeated what I said. But yeah, you can see there that it's nice and thick applied on there. It's kind of hard to tell, but it's got a bit of a shine to it. But now what we're going to do 20 minutes later is take a rag. This is just a dishcloth, but it's nice and soft, but also with those sort of holes in the fabric, it's going to be a nice sort of fabric to polish and buff this wood, which is exactly what I did. Again, it's kind of hard to see in the sunlight that I'm filming this in, but in person it's got an absolutely beautiful, subtle shine to it, which just makes it look so smooth. And it really is. It is just so smooth. And with those edges and the sort of the kidney bean shape of the table, everything about it is just so aesthetic. And I feel like this sort of furniture would really go in any home. And it's just absolutely beautiful. There's the legs, looking gorgeous. Everything looks fantastic. And this is the room that it is going in, which is a very sort of a zen room right next to an Ercol grandfather chair, which I also need to do some restoration to. But again, I wanted to practice on something a little bit cheaper and a little bit smaller before I start going gung-ho on some expensive big stuff. But now I feel far more confident. I even have a bigger Ercol pebble coffee table, which I did the exact same process to, and I'm really happy with the result. This has been absolutely fantastic. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've learned something. I will catch you in another video very soon. Goodbye.